Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking at the Ladies' Home Journal from November 1901, and this article is entitled When We Are Laid Aside, A Talk with Invalids by Margaret E. Sangster. This one immediately caught my eye, and I think this is really the reason I started this channel, is because I wanted these kind of first-person perspectives from history, like a slice of history from a first-person perspective. These are people who lived through the past, and they are telling their story. And this is a human story told from the eyes of the past, turn of the century, 1901. And I don't know this author, who she is exactly, Margaret E. Sangster, but I've noticed that she has very human kinds of articles. So I think that's her main focus. And it's just touching to me, the kinds of humanistic stories that there are. And this is really what I wanted to share. This is what I wanted to share with the world when I started this channel. So, yeah, let's take a look. Among the cheeriest, bravest souls I have ever known, the most patient, the least irritable, and the brightest, have been chronic invalids, people who for long, unbroken periods have had to bear pain and bodily torture, or the burden of great weakness and its resultant weariness of the flesh. They have been living illustrations of one of the noblest words in our English language, fortitude, a word derived from an older language, and incomparably fine in its original as in its later meaning. Strong to suffer, strong to repress complaint, hopeful against a steadily creeping foe, acquiescent in the will of God, these friends have been an object lesson to all who came into their presence. Their dross burned away, only the pure gold has remained after they have undergone the refiner's fire. Wow, those are pretty strong words. All right, what the term shut-in implies. Shut-in, a familiar phrase suggested by the closing in and safe sheltering of Noah in the ark, when the deluge was abroad, has been frequently applied to such sufferers. A shut-in is one who accepts serenely a straitened situation in which she no longer is responsible for the business of the day, her part being not to do, but to endure, who meets the recurrent pang without fretfulness, and makes the best of her lot without rebellion. She is shut in, and the enjoyments of her narrow life must come to her, since she cannot go to them. Shut in to bad days and days compounded of good and of bad, yet always finding in her lot some reason for gratitude. The shut-in always has a window, at least almost always. There are exceptions to every rule. I knew one white-faced woman, quiet of tone, gentle of manner, saint of God, who lay on her couch beside her little window for 17 long years, its clear panes giving her the single glimpses she had of the outside world. Her husband, a German shoemaker, used to sit on his bench in the room below hers, mending children's boots, straightening heels, sewing on buttons, working steadily, and singing Luther's hymns the while. Her daughter stepped lightly about, and the mother had her cheery word for both. My Sunday school class used to go and sing to this dear friend, and they carried her the flowers she loved, and many a little delicacy, jelly, cake, fruit, every gift being received most gratefully. The girls would return from that quiet presence rebuked for their impatience with the little trials which loom so large in the eyes of youth. Released at last and gone where there is no more pain, this elect lady has met some of those ministering spirits in the house beautiful above. She doesn't describe what the reason for their disabilities. It makes you wonder, what caused her problems. Was she born into them? It didn't sound like it with this lady. 17 years. So, there's so many possibilities. I don't know. Try to be victorious over pain. Another friend, married, young, the idolized wife of a man of her own age, the mother of a little boy of 6, was seized suddenly by a slowly advancing and incurable malady which literally bound her hand and foot, and fettered her to the couch for many years. Seized suddenly by a slowly advancing and incurable malady. I wonder what it was. So helpless that she had to be turned when she desired change of position, so dependent that a nurse could never leave her for a moment, at times so tortured that she could compare the sensation only to red-hot pincers tearing her flesh. Ooh, that sounds horrible. This woman maintained her courage unshaken. From her bed she directed her servants, catered for her family, advised with her husband as to the way her child should be brought up, kept in her own care the ordering of her household. That's quite impressive, considering that she wasn't physically able to look around and see what was going on. Like you just have to rely on other people telling you about it. But clearly it didn't affect her mind. Still further, regnant over circumstances. I think it's similar to like the word reign, like reigning over. She kept in touch with the preceptors of her son, personally influenced him through his childhood and youth, and secluded in her chamber, yet to every intent went to school and to college with Tom. By means of a sublime resolution she vanquished the inertia of illness and retained a hold on whatever was happening in the world. People read to her, her friends came in and talked of current events, her minister sent her sermons to read, and often came to cheer and to pray with her. The church choir sometimes gave her an evening of music. Her gaiety of heart resisted depression and bubbled up, effervescent, at every opportunity, and her quick sense of humor did not desert her, however wearying were her bouts with the foe. Laid aside yet victorious, she made me, whenever I was in her presence, think of the stanza we so often repeat. When obstacles and trials seem like prison walls to be, I do the little I can do and leave the rest to thee. For this woman believed in God, and there was never a day that she would have declared, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. What a revelation for the rest of us of the peace our Lord can give, the peace which passeth all understanding. I'm not sure what to say to this. It feels very heavy. I can't imagine being in that position, because it seems so limiting. I do know, however, that if I were in that position that I would adapt to it. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but it just feels as though you can no longer live. Not in the way you used to anyway. It's slightly horrifying. A cheerful room is a necessity. One of the first necessities of an invalid's life is a cheerful room, and as much sunshine, material and mental, as she can bear. Flowers, books, pictures, photographs of dear friends, whatever will make the place attractive should be there. No accumulation of small dust-collecting pieces is permissible. Carpets are unsatisfactory for the invalid's room. A polished floor and rugs, an open fireplace where there may be a blaze on chilly mornings and evenings are desirable. Absolute cleanliness is an essential of an invalid's room for every reason. Yeah, that's all good advice. I like that. I like those suggestions. I also like that the other things that they read about, that the people tended to have a lot of visitors. I really like that too, because the person obviously can't leave the house, so they need people to come to them if they want to have any social interaction. The invalid must, so far as possible, live out of herself, dwell as little as she can on the various phases of her illness, talk not at all, if she can help it, about what she has to suffer. Okay, I don't think that's healthy. If you need to talk about it, you need to talk about it. So I don't know if, I understand not dwelling on it, but, I don't know. I don't know if I'd like that advice. Whatever is beyond and outside her, whatever concerns the great world or any part of it, may fitly form the subject of her thoughts and conversation, but to dwell with monotonous iteration on herself will result in evil consequences. She must resist this temptation, not only for her own sake, but also for the sake of those to whom every pain she bears is a poignant grief. In Louisville, Kentucky, for many years, the home of Jenny Cassidy was a shrine for pilgrim feet. People went to her from far and near for comfort, counsel, and aid. the almoner of the affluent. From her sick chamber she sent help to the poor and the straitened. She was the friend of the prisoner. In every jail and penitentiary in the South there were men who came to Christ through her leading. Miss Cassidy personally conducted a wonderful flower mission, though unable to walk across her chamber, and few who ever met her have forgotten the flowers of thought which blossomed in her gentle speech and through her placid life. Wow. They didn't explain how she did it, though. I'm assuming she wrote a lot of letters, because I don't know how else that would have been possible in those days. They didn't have a telephone, so I'm assuming that she wrote letters. She did everything that she could. Her smile was a benediction, the clasp of her hand a welcome from her warm heart. Few women in unbroken health and vigor have possessed the energy and enthusiasm which burned so brightly in Jenny Cassidy. Okay, she understood in a marvelous way how to console the bereaved, winning the sorrowing mother to work for some forlorn child, and thus keep green the memory of the little lost one, or sending her on an errand to some home where there was a grief greater than her own. Young girls came to her, sure of sympathy in their joys as well as in their trials, and many a story of love and fidelity was poured into her ear. Jenny Cassidy lived for others, and when she went home it must have been to exceeding great joy, for of her the Master could say, as of that other woman, she hath done what she could. A rest home, founded by her exertions, is, in Louisville, her best monument. Founded by her exertions. Interesting. So, okay, apparently she made that happen. That's pretty impressive from a person who can't walk, who couldn't leave her room. They said that before. So, that is quite impressive. A woman went through a long period of confinement to her sofa, facing a possibility that the durance might end only with her life. But there came a blessed change for the better, and she received a new lease of strength. Someone asked her how she had contrived to keep her countenance so free from any lines of fretfulness or traces of the ordeal she had undergone, and her reply was suggestive. I knew that every expression of protest and impatience would leave its mark on my face, and so I preserved an outward calm, restraining myself from the gestures and puckers of cross moods. To appear placid often brings about the result desired, just as the habit of uncontrolled bodily expression increases the mental habit of unrest. See, and I don't think I believe that. Okay, now you're just showing off that you don't have many wrinkles. Some people have a lot and some people have few. It probably had more to do with the fact that you were out of the sun for most of your life. You had no sun damage on your skin. So, that's a little frustrating that they're like, wow, you look so good for someone who has been sick for so long. Like, thanks. I don't know what to say to that either. Her answer is a little silly, but, so is the question. So, there you go. Strive for evenness of mind. There is a beautiful old story told of Antonius Pius as he lay on his bed awaiting the summons of death, his eyes dim with unbidden tears, his limbs moist with the pale sweat of agony. At that moment there entered the captain of the guard, come to demand the watchword, such being the custom. Equanimitas? Evenness of mind. Oh, equanimitas, right? Like equanimity? Yeah? Evenness of mind. He replied as he turned his head to the eternal shadow. Eternal shadow only to the noble pagan, and who knows that with Socrates and Plato and Marcus Aurelius, such as he did not find the shadow luminous and glorified as they passed through it to the presence of the Creator? The nature of disease, said one who had devoted his life to its study and cure, is to get well. The great probability is that as time passes, you who are weak today will grow stronger, or you may discover a climate which will precisely suit your case, or a new treatment which will prove so efficacious that all the disagreeable symptoms will depart and the tide of improvement will set in like a flood. Such wonderful changes are taking place in medicine, such advances are marked in surgery, such new ways of alleviating pain, that there are 1,000 reasons for hopefulness and 1,000 excuses for optimism where there was formerly but one. Okay. There was only one reason for optimism and now there's 1,000? I'm really confused. Sure, if you say so. Keep a brave heart and a cheerful face. Always set your face firmly toward health. Say that you are better when people inquire. Okay, well, if you're not, though, then you're lying. So, I don't know. The very declaration will assist in making you feel so, like, fake it till you make it, huh? I don't like this suggestion at all. Persistent good cheer and hopefulness are remedial agents very hard to defeat in the conflict between illness and health. But at the same time, if you don't really feel it, then you're faking it, and you can tell you're faking it, and it might make you feel worse. So I don't really agree with this necessarily. Let good nursing do what it can for you, and with that sort of relaxed and buoyant ease which comes of giving up the care of oneself to other and judicious hands. Once again, I don't agree with that. The reason is because it's very important that each patient advocate for themselves. And so, yes, you might have a care nurse that because you have a chronic condition, and that is okay. But if ever the care nurse wants to do something that you don't want them to, that you object to for any reason, whatever it may be, then you are within your rights to object. So just letting go and saying, I'm going to let you do your thing and I'm not going to interfere at all is also wrong in my opinion, because you really need to be able to advocate for yourself. So that kind of bothers me as well. No, go ahead and advocate for yourself. Go ahead and stand up and say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. That's okay. Yeah? Be not over ready to try all the remedies which friends recommend. Yeah, I agree with that one. And by no means drop too readily a prescription obtained from your physician. Okay, what do they mean by drop too readily? If your doctor says, try this medicine, it might help, then absolutely try it. But I do know that at this time there were a lot of, all cure-all remedies that were supposed to help everything, and they were mostly alcohol and cocaine, that kind of thing. So maybe that's what they mean. But yeah, if your doctor's giving you a prescription to make you feel better, and it might work, you never know. I mean, back then I guess it was less certain, but today, I would listen to my doctor. I listen to the advice of my doctor, and I take the medications that he gives me, because I want to get better, yeah? Through the fast succeeding ups and downs of the trouble, expect to and resolve to get well. Not for a single instant anticipate staying on the shelf forever. Assert firmly an attention of one day taking your place with the rest of the folk below. Okay, I understand keeping hope, but at the same time you have to be realistic. If you, for example, have a severed spinal cord, you're never going to walk again, yeah? And accepting that and just being no, I'm definitely going to, I can do it, I'm determined. Yeah, but then you're never going to because a severed spinal cord is incurable. Things like that. So, if you had an amputation, what are you going to do? Say, oh no, someday it's going to grow back? I don't know. There's a difference between keeping hope and being unrealistic. So, if you think you could get better, then sure. There's no reason not to hope that someday it will get better. But, I don't know. I feel like this is a little too toxic positivity, you know what I mean? Perhaps you have never yet consoled yourself, dear invalid, with the reflection that your presence in the household is something more than an occasion of service, that it is a distinct blessing to those who minister to you. Now, I like that, because, don't feel like you are a burden. You can also brighten the lives of those who care for you. Yeah? Deprecating the trouble you make, think sometimes how much love is called forth and shown because you are in need, how gentle the children are, how thoughtful the older ones, and how friends and acquaintances love to linger in your room, near your chair or your sofa. If you find the children growing ever fonder of you and more considerate, you should realize that while they do much for you, and also do something very fine and sweet for them, All their lives they will understand better what illness demands, and be swifter of compassion and quicker to relieve pain through the training your sickness has afforded them. That is beautiful. I love that. So that remember that you are also bringing light into the world, even though you're not able to do much for yourself and you need a carer, that you are still valuable in this world. I like that a lot. So, not necessarily the toxic positivity, but that's my favorite part so far, is saying that even though you need care, it doesn't mean that you are a burden. You are still valuable part of the family, and I really like that. Work is the best of safeguards. If you can use your hands and eyes, be chary of allowing others in their well-meant kindness to take your work entirely away. Work is the best of safeguards, and the surest escape valve for bodily distress. Embroidery, knitting, plain sewing, the writing of letters, hold fast to these tasks, and even if you can accomplish very little in a day, do not disdain that little. I was told not long ago of a person laid aside and unable to use her right hand, who set about learning to use her left, refusing to succumb to her disadvantages, and furnishing proof of what a strong will can do. That is very cool. I like that advice a lot because even if you can only do very light tasks, then do them. It's also a good way to help you feel useful and help that feeling of being a burden as well. So that's really great advice as well. Among my acquaintances there is a man, still young, who falling through an elevator shaft from a great height was paralyzed, so that he can never walk again. Obliged to live in a wheeled chair, he uses his hands in helpful ways, takes some of the little daily occupations of the kitchen to himself, wiping cups and saucers, preparing vegetables, and assisting the family in their indoor work. To him, the boy of the house brings his puzzling arithmetic that the problems may be illuminated, and the girl comes with her map for instructions and profitable hints. Before this invalid stretch the long years, but he smiles cheerily in the face of each new day and is an example of heroism and blithe courage to all who know him. I like this and I don't like this at the same time. I liked it until that last sentence. So yes, they're saying that this man who is paralyzed and in the wheelchair is happy to help around the house and does as much as he can, even though he may not have every corner of the house accessible to him. So he will wipe, some of the dishes, and he chops vegetables. I'm sure someone brings them to him if he can't. It sounds to me like he can't access the kitchen very well, but he can still do some things, and he helps the children with their homework. That's all awesome, really cool. It shows that he's able to do plenty of things just in his own way and in his own pace. But then that last sentence, before this invalid stretch the long years, but he smiles cheerily in the face of each new day and is an example of heroism and blithe courage to all who know him. This is kind of like inspiration porn, I believe it's called. This is when they look at someone with some sort of disability and say, oh, that person is so inspiring, and they're literally brushing their teeth. I've heard a lot of things like that because somebody has some sort of disability or chronic condition, and people will be like, oh, they're so inspiring, they're such an inspiration. And this is an example of heroism and blithe courage because he's helping the children with their homework? Or because he's chopping vegetables? Neither of those seem particularly heroic, or that you need courage to do them. Listen, I don't know this person, so I don't know if they were heroic in even their accident didn't sound terribly heroic. He fell down an elevator shaft, so I'm assuming it was out of order in some way, but it's not like he was trying to save a child from a burning building. You know what I mean? Like, that's not really a heroic kind of a gesture. It just smacks of inspiration porn, that last sentence. The rest of it was fine. Like, you're just showing how someone who is unable to walk, but still relatively mobile otherwise, is able to do things around the house and able to really be useful as a person. But then that last sentence is just, and look at what a hero he is for chopping those vegetables. Tear. No. All right, moving on. Try to rise superior to your ills. Do you remember the dear little book called The Story of a Short Life, in which a bright little fellow became a helpless sufferer, and a soldier who had won the Victoria Cross for a gallant and knightly deed on a field of terrific danger showed him that God's soldiers may deserve a decoration when they endure their suffering bravely? Little Leonard was very fond of Heber's hymn. The Son of God goes forth to war, a kingly crown to gain. His blood-red banner streams afar, who follows in his train? Who best can drink his cup of woe, triumphant over pain? Who patient bears his cross below, he follows in his train. Okay, I'm obviously not familiar with that. I'm assuming it was part of the culture at the time. In the intervals which bring relief from the pressure of disease, intervals which are often agreeably prolonged by the skillful treatment of the physician, it is wise to forget illness altogether. The worst possible course for anyone is to live in dread, with the sense of a sword suspended over his head. Fear is a tormenting companion at any time. Most of the evils we dread never happen, and the probability is that the acute or dull pangs which people experience through cowardice and apprehension are far worse than the grimmest reality valiantly encountered. I don't know how I feel about that. Kind of, it's like saying be brave, through your difficult times, because you would rather be brave and face them than be cowardly. And, it's like a lot of times the anticipation of the event is worse than the event itself. So I'm thinking that's kind of where they're going with this, but I don't know if they really brought that across very well. All right. Bring faith and courage to bear. One never-failing prescription can be given to the bond-slaves of fear, and it is this: trust in God. Pray daily for freedom, and letting go all hold of your own small and weak self. Take the grace of heaven, and believe that Jesus Christ can make you whole. I recommend daily seasons of prayer, as nearly as possible at the same time in the morning and evening. And if you have a shut-in friend whom you love, and whom you cannot see, ask her to keep the morning and evening watch with you, so that you may each receive the cheer and courage which come of united prayer. Okay, that was very religious, obviously, but if it gives people purpose and helps them to overcome their feelings of hopelessness, then absolutely. If it's helpful to them, I don't see anything wrong with that. All right. The article in general is a good article, but I feel like it wasn't very well executed. I feel like it would be more interesting for us to hear about the individual stories and how they, like, what kind of disability that they have. Not necessarily sharing the cause if you don't want to, but for example, if you can be more specific about what they can and cannot do, I think that would have been more helpful. I feel like that was very vague. Saying just that the person is a shut-in, quote unquote. What does that mean? Can they get out of bed? Can they sit in a wheelchair? Can they feed themselves? Can they dress themselves? Can they go to the bathroom by themselves, or do they need assistance? You know what I mean? So sometimes it was clear there was a woman who was unable to even turn over in bed, and she needed to be moved multiple times a day. And then the man who was in the wheelchair, that was clear to me as well. But only because I'm familiar with paralysis from the waist down, which is what I'm assuming he has, unless it's from the chest down. Well, that was not clear. But if I hadn't been familiar with that, then it wouldn't have been clear to me what was going on with him. So, just an observation. I also was not at all a fan of the inspiration porn, but some of the advice was really good. So, like realizing that you are not a burden, that you also have something to contribute to the household, but where you live or to the carers that come to care for you. I really like that. Encouraging you to do some kind of work, whatever that may be, even if it's not very heavy work, that you can still do some things. Also, the person who apparently like organized a whole bunch of things from home, they were not at all clear how she did that, and I think that that would have been helpful information for someone else who is also in a similar situation. So that's my opinion. I feel like the article could have been much more clear and more detailed, and I think it's a little bit, it's kind of a missed opportunity, that it wasn't. So a little too bad, but all in all, it was interesting information. I just wish it had been more precise, more explicit information, and not just little vague stories. Yeah, that's a little too bad. Opportunity missed. So that's my opinion. Maybe at the time it wasn't common to give that kind of information out. Maybe this was kind of as much as they ever talked about it. And it also has a little blurb at the bottom. It says, "This is the third of a series of articles by Mrs. Sangster dealing with the women too often overlooked in our literature, the aged, the sick, and the tired. Others of the same nature will be published from time to time in the journal." So I do like that they are trying to spotlight people who normally don't get a lot of screen time, so to speak. Except in this case it's pages of the newspaper. Anyways, but I hope you enjoyed that Microfiche time capsule anyway. Let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed it, or if there's another kind of article you would like to read about. So I would be happy to look at those. So make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.